To order the Special Ed, Alternative Ed, and Early Childhood Subcommittee. Please call the roll.
Ms. Dragia?
Here.
Ms. Pereira?
Here.
Ms. Roberts?
Here.
Please stand. Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. We'll jump right into the agenda. Is there any citizen input? No, there's not. We are going to try to keep this meeting to around an hour and a half. So if there's things that are going to go on longer, we might just table them and get rid of the ones that we need to, more importantly for the meeting. 3.01 is a discussion and vote to refer a People Incorporated contract. Superintendent or whoever you would like to represent.
Yep, I will defer to Dr. Bronhard.
Thank you. So I am joined here by Meg Stirk from People Inc. And Kyle Riley, the principal of RPA. We are looking to bring back another contract this year. People Inc. has had a contract down at RPA since 2015. As you can see, the contracts have ranged in what we have paid out to People Inc. as a third-party consultant. As we look at program opportunities and workforce development opportunities at RPA, that is really where our main focus is with this relationship with People Incorporated. Historically, in meeting with staff at RPA, particularly staff who've been at RPA over the years, there has been an ebb and flow of strength and outcomes and opportunities to serve the kids prior to COVID, where we did not have as many restrictions, we did not have as many staffing challenges. Program outcomes were really strong and were really central to the climate and culture of the community. Kids spoke very highly of their experiences in the programs, and we're really looking to replicate where we were a couple of years back. Post-COVID, we've been able to do some decent work, some good work down with People Inc. As you can see, there's been a range of different programs as it relates to some tutoring that was particularly in ELA and math, and as well as some workforce and urban youth leveraging of opportunities. As we look to move in, we've given some historical data of outcomes of previous years, particularly last year, because I was questioning People Inc. as it related to last year's contract. What were the outcomes based on what the projections versus outcomes by the end of the year. So with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Meg to speak to where People Inc. has been. As you know, I was not at RPA last year, so I've had to leverage my collaboration with Meg as well as the staff who were at RPA to be able to understand where the programs were and if there were any limitations to being able to follow through with the contract, what that looked like and what the reasons were for that.
Sure, thank you. So as Amy mentioned, we've been doing this for many, many years. Prior to the pandemic, we had a big workforce development training program, trying to kick off culinary, CNA programs, human services, workforce certificates. Pandemic obviously put a slowdown on that, and as of recently, it's been primarily the math and ELA tutoring. We also, within the school building itself, we have an engagement center room, so we're also providing basic toiletry needs as well to the students as they come in, as they need. Snacks and water, that's typically the most popular, and then the math and the ELA tutoring. And in addition to that, which has been strong and beneficial, but really bringing back what we've done in terms of workforce and attracting these kids to show up every day, because at the end of the day, there's something else waiting for them. So whether it's a paid internship, which is what we did last year with great success, in getting many of the students to have an internship at one of People Incorporated's residential group homes. One of the students did an internship at our early education center, and to continue that track, but also additional tracks in terms of what those students want and need. And so surveying the kids and what would attract them, right? What's going to get them to show up every day. So in discussions that we've had, whether that be culinary, a CNA program, continuing the human service program, we're looking to explore all that again and to bring it back to the programming level that it was pre-pandemic.
And so we are also looking to take these workforce development programs and also to consider attaching high school credit to them for our kids. That would be in alignment with the work development program that's up at Durfee, although not a carbon copy, but certainly more in alignment for an equitable experience, that there is workforce development, that kids can earn some high school credits to be able to be in a position to graduate at the end of the school year. In addition to that, we felt that People Inc. was a really great place to build upon because of the fact that these opportunities are literally in the circumference of RPA as a building. And so as we look at what we do have control over for our kids, transportation, getting them to RPA, getting them to this part of the city, having the opportunities for People Inc. be within the circumference and the area of RPA, as well as another extension, the work that we've also been doing, which isn't tied here, but we've been really working with the Youth Violence Prevention Program. They have been accessing RPA, and they too are in the circumference, and those case managers will help support some of our kids to stay engaged in the program once it gets rolling. One of the things that I brought up with Meg was the 2 tutors piece. I was questioning Meg around the rationale for tutors. We as a school department hire tutors all the time. But one of the pieces that we really want to move into this year is leveraging the tutors beyond the school day, looking at a flex schedule so that the tutors are not there the traditional school day, but using this as our first opportunity to extend the school day at RPA. But in addition to that, MCAS tutoring for kids who have not yet passed MCAS and are in the program, this can be an option because their schedules are full for graduation requirements outside of, the current schedule is full of graduation requirements. But another component to this for the tutors is that our kids who are in the CNA program, the culinary program, or the direct service program, they're going to need support in the tutoring that's related to the academic work for that career pathway. So using the tutors to support the students' ability to navigate the academic components to those career pathways. And so our goal will be to build up the tutors in that lane, as well as working with the school staff for the kids who need MCAS, but may not be able to put it during their school day because of other competing graduation requirements.
And if I can just add, so I certainly, and Megan, because we met last year. So we've talked about pre-pandemic where the partnership was and how we struggled to get the partnership up and running. So, and that we struggled to get it up and running in regards to trying to fit it in and with our typical schedule, et cetera. So we certainly have to take responsibility for that. And this is an opportunity for us to reset ourselves, to really come back stronger and give our kids more opportunity. I think that last year we were trying to get ourselves back in the door and trying to get some semblance of something. It took a long time to get anything going, and even then it was sparingly, right? It's hard. It was hard to build that consistency, to get the kids back on board, to get staff on board, to let go and allow kids to access the program as they should, the multiple programs. So all of that work needed to be reset, right? So that we can begin in full force. And that's what Dr. B has been doing, meeting with staff, with leadership, as well as including the partners in how do we leverage all these partnerships and create opportunity. Because really, People Inc., any partnership that we can contract with is an opportunity for our kids, and they're going to be the ones that benefit from it. But I will say, last year was not an example of what the opportunity was that our kids had access to. It was just like the very small beginning of a reset.
Any questions?
I have a lot of questions. I'm trying
Do you want to go first?
I
or
got one
second?
quick one.
I'm trying to.
I might have others.
Yes,
I got
sir.
one quick. I got one quick. The tutoring you were talking about, because that's the first thing I thought too. I'm like, why are we getting tutoring from them? And then when you said after school, I said, okay, that makes sense in my head. But then you mentioned they're going to tutor in, ELA, math, MCAS skills. But then you mentioned the programming, so like the CNA and culinary. So I'm just wondering, what tutors are we getting? Because when I think of tutoring for a CNA, that's do they have that science and nursing background? Because that to me doesn't, I don't know if that if I'm wrong, or if that's a fit, or where that fits in.
So the CNA program, we'd consult out with that. So
Okay.
on the CNA program, in the past, we've used BCC. Doesn't mean that that's who we would use, but
Okay.
that's who we're familiar. People Incorporated, we have CNAs on staff, so
Okay.
it's a process and a program that we are beyond familiar with.
Okay.
We have an entire room at 4 South Main Street that is set up for a nursing type structure.
Okay.
So the medical beds, the sinks, the Hoyer lifts, we have all of that there. So we have the equipment, we have the training room, and then depending on whether we have a nurse who is qualified through the Department of Public Health to provide the training, we could do it in-house if we don't have those supports, because it's very hard to get nurses. Otherwise, we'd have to consult out. A lot of times
Okay.
we would consult out though.
Okay. And that would be the same, I'm assuming, with culinary.
Correct. We'd have to get a not necessarily a
I'm a
chef,
good tutor, but trust me, I couldn't tutor
right. Yeah.
anybody
No.
in the
No.
kitchen.
No. It's not me doing any of the culinary.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we're making sure. All right, thank you. That was my quick question. I might have others. Sarah, Kevin, you want to go?
I'm sorry.
So, extending the tutoring beyond the school day. So if we're talking about ELA and math tutoring, we've talked forever about extending supports with our own staff beyond the school day at RPA. So I'm wondering why we wouldn't use our own staff to do that, because that's a piece that we've talked about for a long, long time, was extending past that 3 o'clock time in our own buildings. I'm just looking at how do we fill some of these needs with our own capacity.
So I don't want to speak to the staffing patterns at RPA, but I would say right now, the opportunity to get staff on a reoccurring basis to work beyond the school day is going to be a large challenge. The community at RPA is working hard and tirelessly day in and day out. It has been extremely challenging for that team. And so in not all circumstances do we have people available and willing to work beyond the school day, as well as looking to build some case management for these kids connected to the tutors, because we want to be sure that the program outcomes are realized and not have that be a secondary outcome for those kids, right? And so with the tutors being built into the program, we took the existing model and looked to build upon the existing model for this year to see if this is going to meet our goals. We also talked with Meg that this is where we've been in the past. We're going to continue to move forward. If we feel moving forward for a more stable program run by the Florida Public Schools, we want to be able to do that. But that wasn't budgeted in last year's budget. And so we don't have those programs designed in the building now. We don't want this year to be a planning year where we don't have opportunities for the kids that are there as juniors and seniors more specifically. So we too want to build a more sustainable model moving forward. That was just not part of the budget process last year. And as all of getting Kyle on board in early August, getting the school year launched, knowing we do have a relationship and a historical partnership with People Inc., we want to use that to move us into this year, and then we'll look to reestablish if that's the decision that we choose to propose to the committee and the committee agrees to go. But we want to make sure this year we've got something of stability to be able to present. And a number of staff, we still have a number of openings at RPA, so even the staff pool with which we're looking to pull from is not there. As you know, we're struggling to fill the math teacher positions right now at RPA, so when we look at math tutors, we don't even have math teachers to be able to pull from on that front. And in talking with People Inc., they do have some capacity that right now we just don't have as viable candidates to be able to offer those opportunities to.
But have we asked the question of our folks if they were open and willing to? And I'm not saying that you haven't or that you're
I can
pushing
answer
something.
it in a way. No, we didn't ask that question, but we have asked some other questions. We're trying to start up like a detention piece to really cut down our suspensions and start, scaffolding that up, and we couldn't get anybody to stay. And so I think it's just burnt right now, and I know it's beginning of the year, but I think it's an intense position that they need to go and deal and be a SEL product for the kid. They need to be a teacher for them, and I know you know this game, but they are walking out the door ready to go home at the end of the day. They really are.
So that
However-
worries me,
But
because it's October.
Well, what he's saying is like it's their day is enough for them at this
Yeah.
point. However, I think in moving forward, as we plan forward, we need to be creative and look at the structure. I know that we're going to be negotiating, looking at contract and all that stuff, and see if there's a way that we can be creative about staffing and how we stagger staff, etc. Because that might be factor into it. Someone might teach a different time. Everybody doesn't have to work 8 to 2.
Right. This is the conversation that we've had for a really long
yeah.
time because
But
their lives
involves-
don't end after 2 p.m.
Absolutely.
Right. Because
I think that you'd be a lot more likely to find people who stagger the positions. some who have children, some who don't,
Yep.
like, I really do.
Because when I look at this, we're more than doubling that contract from last year. We're going
So Meg,
from-
if Meg, yeah, so we can have Meg speak to that piece of it for us.
Sure, absolutely. So for many, many years, the agency, we've absorbed losses. It was important to meet a community need. And so with our board of directors, we've always approved a loss in this program. And we continue to do so even with the budget that's in front of you. And so really the 70,000 was covering the cost of the tutors with a little bit of oversight and coordination. What is reflected there that might not be clear, excuse me, is through the Department of Developmental Services, we hold an urban youth contract, and we facilitate using that additional $50,000 to go towards the majority of the students at the resiliency prep. Really, that program could be open to any high school students. In the last few years, we focused on that 50,000 going to RPA, and that 50,000 that's where we're able to do the paid internships. So the additional cost in the increase in funding that you're seeing there is truly, for the most part, covering the supervision of the program, as well as the consultants for the CNA course and the culinary individual that obviously we don't have identified yet. But just looking at costs from about 2017, which is when we had some culinary and medical programming in the building, we kind of, put a little bit for inflation, but the costs are pretty close to what it would be, and in checking around with folks. So the additional cost is really for the additional tracks.
that you're saying we had in 2017.
Yes, 2018, around that time.
So that was still, this has tripled since 2017 and 2018. So when you're saying a little bit for inflation, we're talking about a lot for inflation.
I'm sorry, so we've never been reimbursed for any of the tracks that we have held. So we have been absorbing those losses and we're at as we continue on with the relationship, and the cost, the increase in wages over those years, the loss that we are incurring has just grown substantially, which our organization is proud to be part of this partnership, but at the same time we have to be realistic and have a fiduciary responsibility. So we're still going to be having, I don't know, roughly a $70,000 loss at the end of the day if we were to go forward with all the tracks, and that's fine, right? We've got it's for what we're doing with these students. It's doable, but we have to at least start to catch ourselves up to make us a little bit in the hole. Out of the hole.
I'm gonna hold for now, but I have other questions. I just
So-
want to take a vote.
I'm just concerned about where we've been, what we've offered, and how was the money used, because I've been on this committee for a long time, we've never gotten that. To know, okay, we give 70,000, whatever the number is, I think it was 70. What did that $70,000 get us?
Mhm.
So, absent that, I looked at it as, let me try to figure this out. So I go to the website for RPA. On the website, I click the button for the engagement center. It had a director and 2 tutors is listed on the school department website for $70,000. So I think that's what we were getting for the $70,000. Then last year, halfway through the year, the director left to come to work here. Nobody replaced that person at the RPA, but we still had the 70,000. Like, we didn't get, when that happened, we didn't say the 70, it was now fiduciary wise 65, 62. It never got affected. And I could only go by what we're told and what we look at. Now, granted, we got new people at the table, but I don't feel comfortable going forward until we address what happened in the past. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but
So just to clarify that standpoint, the director left, we brought in another director towards the end of the school year. There was a bit of a gap. I don't know the time, so I'm gonna say about 2 months. I'd have to go back and double check. I personally was a person that was at that school during that time frame. We have a math and ELA tutoring. Their supervision directly reported to me. A couple of other folks. We had in terms of, we were doing the human service direct care support workforce track at that point. So I had my HR team in there helping these kids apply to People Incorporated. So in terms of getting you any type of backup in terms of the tutoring hours and the payroll allocations, I mean we just had our audited financial statements get complete by an external party. RPA, our program at RPA is audited. They're looking at the payroll logs, which is reflecting a continuous loss in that program. So any information that you want in terms of showing that money is readily available.
So, by listening to what you're saying, nothing changed then? So we have at the RPA, when I go to the website and I click the button and it says Community Engagement Center, we have a director and 2 tutors on staff.
We have the director, there is, who is allocated across other programs in our organization. They are not, our director and our coordinator are not 100% to RPA. The coordinator, she is a person that will really keep the tracks going, the culinary, the CNA, whatever we choose to do. A lot of it is a hands-on, being in the building, making sure the kids are where they need to be after school for their internship or whatnot. And then the tutors are pretty much, for the most part, just purely tutors, around 30 to 35 hours a week.
So who is it, when I look on the website and I see staff and I click the button,
Mhm.
if I went down there, I'd see that those 3 individuals?
Yes.
Like
With not with full time. So anywhere, say 12 to 20 hours a week, depending on a track that is going on. That could be very well what you would see down there. The director themselves is there a couple of days a week for bits of time, an hour or 2, maybe 3 times a week.
So the person who left that come to our schools, what was their title? Director?
Director, yes, director of workforce
And then
development.
there's a second person somewhere?
We have a coordinator position, which is the one
That's
that's
always
there.
existed?
It was Corey Sylvia back at one point before the pandemic. When we came back and a lot was scaled back, we had to furlough him, and then we did not return him because the tracks weren't happening and we didn't have the funding to support him. So Corey is no longer with us, and we just replaced that position over the summer. This person plays a role in our Camp Jack, which is for kids with type 1 diabetes, so she has a summer role. And then during the school year, she'll flush into this role. But she is replacing someone who we had full-time back pre-pandemic.
And that's called supervisor?
Correct.
And the program director is,
Yes.
who is the program director?
Mimi Larrabee?
And the supervisor is new.
Yes, Emily Martins.
So when I'm looking at that, I look at it and say there was something that we didn't do, and the superintendent admitted it, that we didn't get our part done or whatever. But when we're given the money, I'm looking at it, not so much on you, it's more on us, to say, what did we do to say we didn't get the services that we thought we were gonna get? Or, as you were talking, you said we had CNA before, I wrote a note towards like 18, 19, whatever those years were when it came. And similar to what Ms. Roderick said, I said, well, we had it before for 60,000. And I know you're talking about a loss and a lot, but you gotta understand that for us, it would be like, okay, so we're doubling it now. How did we do it before? And then is there a mechanism for us to say, what if we don't get anybody? We still pay the whole thing? Or do we say,
If we don't get anybody to work or any kids
any
to participate.
kids? So like, let's say for us, like we go in and we say, okay, we're gonna take this leap and do this. And we think we're gonna get whatever kids. Then we don't get any. But we still spent the money because of the way that it goes, like the after dark thing that we tried that didn't work. But we either spent money or we're gonna spend money, and then if there's no kids to go in the program, then how
So
do we
there are,
guarantee
so I
that we're
think
gonna get some?
I think that's where it really lands on the staff down at RPA. So just like at Durfee, we have programs, but it takes recruitment of kids to understand the benefits of those programs and how we support kids in being successful in the programs, right? So right now, if we're really honest, there is no programming outside of traditional academic and some fine arts programming down at RPA. We have been working really hard to leverage community partners and to take advantage of People Inc. as a workforce development partner in the most immediate current steps, right? The fact that CNA and the CNA work in culinary, these were programs that were very, from what I was told, I wasn't there at the time, but were very, not just connected for by kids and kids getting excited about, but it was a legitimate energy among the staff in the building, and kids understood it was gonna yield them to employment, right? So for me, I don't feel comfortable not offering our kids at RPA any employment opportunities and skill development. And I believe, thinking about the jobs that we know in career pathways that can then connect them to adults that will hopefully engage them to further their education. That was our plan, right? Also, because People Inc. is so connected to that downtown area, being connected back to RPA so that we can have these connections back and forth, it feels like we can create a wraparound program and wraparound services that can yield job outcomes and workforce development outcomes for kids. Ideally, we would be surveying kids first, getting all these pieces up and running, but all of this started after the school year started or right when the school year was starting, and that we literally ran out of time between Kyle coming on board in August and getting the principal hired to begin making these moves. Ideally, we would have done this in August, so we would have other pieces to it, but being in October, we want to be able to move so we can create something for kids that gets them excited to come to school, and also gives our kids that are freshmen and sophomores that see themselves at RPA because that's where they want to be, that there are going to be job-related opportunities there for them. On the other side of that, we're also working with freshmen to identify, I want to go back to Durfee, what's my game plan to get back to Durfee so I can then have access to all the opportunities that we know the high school offers that are different. But right now, with the juniors and seniors who we know we need to support to get across the stage and pass for graduation, we wanted to give them something meaningful, and if we can connect the dots to employment, we felt as though this was the best route based on where we've been successful in the past and where we do have job opportunities that we know we can support kids in finding as a result of their participation in the program.
And how do the tutors get paid? Like, is that a yearly? Is it a?
They're what we consider an RN seasonal employee, so they're 10 months of the year, and it's kind of like a temporary layoff over the summer. But they're on our books, paid directly through payroll, not as consultants.
Yeah. So when we say 75,000 for tutors, that is 2 tutors. So they're divided by 2.
Correct.
Safe
Yes.
to say.
Yes.
Then I see 59,000 in additional tutors that are on the other side. So now that's
The
is that 2 more?
59,000 is what we pay the students who become internships.
Those are the paid interns.
Those are the paid internships. Those are the students at RPA getting paid by People Incorporated through a totally separate contract through the Department of Developmental Services.
Okay. It says tutors. That's why I was saying
Right.
on the
Okay.
sheet it kind of
Let me just pull it out.
may just look might be just the wrong wording. But,
Okay.
we had this is the form
Oh, it's
that
on the
we're looking
wrong. It
at.
should be down one line item. That should be on the direct care line item.
So, I like this personally. I've never seen this before. Not this one because it's new, but
Yeah.
in the past years, we don't get what I feel we need to get something to make us feel a little. We pay a lot of money to community partners and we try to figure out why and all this.
And I just want you to know that was central to my conversation with Meg and People Inc., which is why we were not before this committee in September, because I needed to understand from the contract we've already invested with you on and fully understanding as I'm growing into this position, what did and did not happen down at RPA last year based on what we contracted for. So that was central to our discussion. I said, Meg, I need this to be in a presentable way that the committee can understand where our investments were and where we're going this year as it relates, because this wasn't how we originally started either. And that was central to our conversation at the district level to be able to answer those questions for you guys as a committee.
The when you look at the outcomes, like I'm having a hard time with. I think because we've been not learned, but like it hasn't been a good process in some ways where we give some money to people and we don't like either follow it up or like mid-cycle. So like we said, we're going to try this for the first semester, trimester, whatever, and then January comes and we have nobody. We're not doing it anymore. You know, like the money would would stop if we weren't successful with it. What we've traditionally done is just it's all in and then nobody follows up. So I'd be much more comfortable if there was some sort of, when this goes to the full committee, to let's talk about, we're gonna try this for half the year and see what it is. And then even if it's just an acknowledgement that we're not gonna keep, like you said, they're contracted or whatever, what if we stopped it halfway if it wasn't working or we needed to pivot and do something else? We would be able to, if we didn't spend all of this money, then we say, Mr. Riley, what do you need for can you use $35,000, $40,000 in a different way that's better at mid-year?
January check-in would feel.
I mean, certainly a January check-in. I just want to bring to your attention that this is it was a year-long plan with the idea that the most immediate programs we would roll out for recruiting of staff and getting the programs off the ground was going to be CNA by the term 2 November, like grading time frame switch, right? Then in January, that's when we're planning to launch the culinary program. So all about the mid-year split, we just need to be able to plan forward for the.
But are they ending? So when you do culinary, you're not doing both?
No, we are doing both, but not, culinary isn't starting till January.
Right, but we're thinking before that, we're thinking CNA and the Human Service Direct
Correct,
Support.
for
So we're
November.
thinking of 2 programs come a month or so from now, and then culinary would be second.
And so we can do a January report out on where we are with those first 2. I just want to be able to plan forward for January as we're sitting here now planning for January.
Right, because
We
we'll be
can also-
hiring the
We could also
consultants.
report out on how many kids
Right.
we've recruited
For
culinary.
culinary, yeah,
To see if
perfect.
it's viable to see.
Because by that point, you should know
Absolutely,
if I'm
yep,
gonna have
absolutely.
one kid interested in culinary, and why
Why would we invest
in
at that point? Absolutely.
When frankly, we could bring that one kid over to Durfee and
Yep.
create a different plan for
Absolutely.
that one particular kid.
Yep, absolutely.
So, I know I'm throwing my 2 cents in,
No,
it's
I
not my
agree.
turn,
No,
but
you
I
can
don't speak
feel-
in turn.
No, feel free to go. Those are my questions. I want to support it. I think partnerships are great when there's a benefit to the partnership of why, and you've articulated some reasons why. Sometimes we do things that we could do ourselves and just hire the person ourselves and have them work, but we go to a third party. And to me, that's not the best way to go
We don't
about it, so-
disagree at all. This is also a legitimate timing thing for us as well. And knowing the concerns we've had with being able to hire a number of other positions. And also, we've been in conversation, there has been some recruitment already kind of underway with People Inc. through some of the networking that they've got through just some sources. So we do have a couple of bodies lined up, and not lined up as in like hired, but ideas of that, like we don't feel as though we'll end up empty on the tutor side. But we don't disagree. I think there's a number of these programs that we need to have much larger conversations about, and additional programs to not just stop here, as it relates to creating viable alternative options at our alternative school. And that is much more encompassing in a much larger conversation, but that is also not something we necessarily have to be third-party consultants on.
And
Who
our,
was it? I'm sorry. Was there anyone here in this room, besides obviously because you guys didn't work at RPA, that actually saw this functioning at the RPA when it was functioning at the RPA? Anybody?
do I count as one of those people?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
So you're the only one.
I've
Okay.
worked with those kids.
Okay. So my question then would be, was it successful?
It was. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I think, last year, defining that level of success, I think is important. And so last year we had, for the direct support professional certificate, we had 9 kids graduate. I think the number started around 13 or 15. And only 9 completed it. And to us, that was a success, right? And so I think sometimes you say the number 9 to people and they're like, well, out of 150 something kids, why is that successful? And to us, it's wildly successful, right? And we had opportunities with other sources of funding. We tried to get these kids to go to driver's ed. A few of them did, and again, that's 9 kids. One of which, to work full-time at People Incorporated, you have to be 18 or older. But one of those kids is still with us. So right now, I have an employee at People Incorporated from RPA, and that's like, those are the statistics that might seem small to someone. But I think it's amazing, and I think what Kyle was saying is we got to make them want to show up, and we got to make them want to stay all day. We want to make them to stay all day and have a good day.
Yeah.
And I think as long as we find the right track, to your point, like if that one kid signs up, that's not gonna do it. But we're willing to pivot that if culinary isn't it or whatever.
What
if we
is it?
start going cosmetology or mechanic or whatever,
Right.
whatever it might be.
Ask what they're looking
Exactly, and that's what we're doing. And just so everyone here in the room knows, we have an ELA tutor who has been there almost since inception. Maybe she even has been there since we started. I have to double check that. I can't remember for some reason. We are struggling with the math tutor. I want to get that out on the table that we don't have the math tutor in play, but we're working on it. By potentially talking about an extended day, we're able to. We've shifted our job description a bit to make it. To just give us a little bit more flexibility in terms of those hours and be clear that it's not a full school day. And so maybe it's even going to be per diem, right? Maybe it'll be a couple of days, regular school day, and then maybe Wednesday, Thursday, it's more towards the afternoon. So we're trying to do our best to pivot in any way to best suit, Kyle in the school.
Yeah. So Principal Riley, you've only been there a couple months. I didn't see you when I walked in, by the way. I know my glasses
I
on
know.
and I recognize you. I hope you're well. Do you think it's going to be hard recruiting kids into these programs? Do you think if we give you these programs, we're only going to have one kid who wants to do it? What do you think? I know you've only been there 2 months, so you
No.
don't know but
I
what do
think-
you get from the
I
vibe?
think kids are hungry to have something.
Okay,
My experience in New Bedford in the alternative school was
Yeah.
we had a culinary department,
yeah,
and it was everybody was dying to be in it.
Yeah.
Because not only do you produce food,
You get to
and
eat
most
the
of our
food.
kids are going to get some kind of job
Yeah.
in either retail or in food service, right?
Mm-hmm.
So give them a real skill. We'll use it as part of our behavior program, quite frankly, that will have kids who make their points be able to access food off the regular menu here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But we ran a pretty
Social
stout
programming
program.
is really struggling with that.
It'll be healthy.
No, not even
Oh,
that.
food
No,
behavior,
just-
I got you.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got you.
Food as an incentive is,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm struggling.
So,
Different kids, different incentive needs, I
yeah.
think.
But
So
still, food is a basic right. So again, like I struggle with that idea.
it's extra, though. It's not.
That's
well,
a different conversation,
conversation.
right here.
But it was a very stout program that
Okay.
really, I think it's going to be the one that kids like the most. So it's almost good that it's the second one. You'll see the results of the who's getting in the first couple of programs, knowing that culinary will be full. I think it'll be full.
Yeah.
That's my experience, and it's
Yeah.
what I believe. So.
So, I mean, I understand that maybe last year things didn't go the way they should have. I'm kind of remiss because I just realized that these programs weren't in the RPA. I wasn't aware of that. I guess that's my fault. I don't know why they're not. In my opinion, these are the students that need it the most. If we're going to try to set them up for any kind of success in life, they definitely need some life skills, because we can do this, but when they graduate and they're out there, they're gonna have some hard lessons that they should be learning while they have adults like Megan that care about them, and like you and everybody at the table that cares about them. So I'm not like a Monday morning quarterback here. I'm not gonna go, what happened last year? Because I don't know. I wasn't on this committee. I don't know. If it was bad, then it has to stop now. We have to make sure we're getting our bang for our buck. We want to know everything that's going on and make sure that all of this money is getting spent appropriately. I feel comfortable in that. I think People Incorporated they're trustworthy, they're reliable. Like you said, you've been audited. This isn't just some, I don't want to use the wrong word, but this is a real facility that's been doing this real important work for a very long time, and they're grounded in this community and obviously taking a hit to help these kids out. And yeah, I see that the cost is up. I mean, $70,000 for 2 tutors doesn't seem like a lot to me. $35,000 a year for a tutor. That $50,000 potentially going back to our students' pockets in way of paid internships. So to me, that's awesome. Getting them out there. I am 100% fully in support of this. And I think you guys need to push the heck out of it, and then don't stop, come back with more, because in my opinion, there's absolutely no reason that there shouldn't be more training programs or more job life skills at the RPA. So these kids, and it's not, and I understand what Sarah's saying about the food as a reward, but I look at it, but this is what I'm saying. When you said it, I didn't hear it the way she heard it, because whatever. I heard it as, ooh, if I behave and I do everything I need to do, and I make sure I check off all the boxes of the responsibility list I have, then I get to go do something cool like cook or create something. So I'm looking at that as somebody not just stuffing their face, but like an opportunity to like create food. Because I work in a program where I work with low-income people to manage a very small budget to create food, as opposed to just buying stuff you put in your mouth, because the process of creating is really awesome and it makes people feel good. I mean, I'm not a cook, but once in a while, if I make something good, I like want to pat myself on the back, and it makes me feel really good, when normally everybody tells me I'm really bad at cooking, and normally they're right.
Yeah, right.
So it's nice to sort of be validated, and that's just not the culinary program, that's the CNA program too, right? Being able to have compassion and understand how to care for people, not just the science aspect of it, but the actual compassion and care that goes into being a nurse or a nursing assistant. I think I just want to see more, so I'm in fully support of it. I can't imagine what would change my mind, but you never know. So I don't know if you guys have any. Yeah.
Add one thing to what you said. We've already been, some of our students that graduated with our certificate program. Many are graduated, but there's a few who are now, are still in the school. They've already expressed interest, and some of them worked in our medical homes, and so they saw some of the CNAs. So that, just so you know, like they saw some of our CNAs in action.
Yeah.
A little bit more money. So again, we've already got a few of the kids who went through, and they can go through it again. So we have some returning students.
And it's an incentive, and you may get 5 kids who graduate from the CNA program. 4 of them may go on to be CNAs. 2 of them may go on to nursing school. 1 of them may end up getting her nurse practitioner license. So It doesn't matter if it's 5. Every kid, you know, we all know that, but I understand financially we can't have one kid in a program, I get it, but, you know, anyway, with that I yield. I don't know if we want to, can we make a motion to refer this to committee, or do you have more? Sarah?
No, just to clarify, my
Oh, sure,
concerns are not related to whether or not this is a good idea to put in the building. That is not whatsoever the question, because of course it's a good idea, because I think all of our kids, every single one of them from middle school on, need to have access to these types of programs. My son is in a vocational program, right? It's fully support all of that. I don't think it's playing Monday morning quarterback though when we're asking questions about what we did in the past with that money, because it is a significant jump. And so if our responsibility is to look at the finances here, then we've got to look at what are we doing with it? What's going to be different this time? How can this be better? Right? I've worked with Emily for a long time and I adore Emily, and I have no doubt that Emily will go in there and do a tremendous job. I know that she's already been doing a tremendous job. So my questioning does not come from I'm worried about, you know, giving kids access to these things. Of course, they need way more than this. And if we have one kid in culinary, yeah, we're not going to pay for a full program at RPA for culinary. I doubt you're only going to get one kid in culinary. But we're going to figure out how to move that kid somewhere else to be able to still give them what it is that they're looking for, because they're excited, they're motivated, and we want these kids here, right? That's the bottom line. But I do think it's really important that we look at what didn't work, because we've said from the beginning that we've really struggled to get this into a good flow. And so if we've really struggled to get this into a good flow for the last 8 years, I think it's important, even if we weren't all sitting here, to look at what didn't go well before and what can we fix moving forward.
I think we had great momentum, right?
Yeah.
I think we had great flow,
Absolutely.
right? You know, up and then you know, we had to furlough a staff. That staff was key in getting those kids to show up, to attend their whatever track they were in. But then we weren't doing tracks, right? So you know, we really, you know, all the funding that we have gotten since day one has been for those tutors, and up until this year, I think every school year we've had no problem getting math and ELA tutors. They have been there, and so that's what the funding has entirely covered out of all those years. People Incorporated, we were fortunate that during the time, and I think at different points back then, we were able to utilize other sources of funding outside the school department to help offset a little bit of the culinary and some of the other programs. But and we have of course have the records on that, but just so everyone knows that all the funding that the Fall River School Department has given us since we started school year 14-15 has been entirely focused on the tutors, and then we've just grown upon that, and that's what we're looking to do to get the momentum back. We've got a great team. I would love for you to meet Ann, the ELA tutor down there. She's incredible to watch. She's incredible to see with those kids. And again, she's been doing it, I think, since we started, and we've got the basis, you know, we've got some groundwork from the People Incorporated side down there.
Maybe saying Monday morning quarterbacking wasn't the word I need to use. Obviously, we have to learn from mistakes, but I also know that some of this dishevel had to do with COVID, because it existed. It had to do with shutting down, and it had to do with all this. So what I'm hearing from over here, and maybe I'm wrong, so you guys can correct me, but what I'm hearing some of the issues is that you'd prefer that we had our teachers doing this job. So would I. So do I, but we don't. I mean, I prefer we do it. I prefer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's absolutely makes sense. But from what I understand, we definitely don't have that. I understand that your teachers are you know, not wanting to stay, and I don't want that to be interpreted by anybody watching like they hate working there. Because I'll tell you what, the teachers that work there are the ones that come up to me in the community and like, I love what I do, and they're so pumped and passionate. They really are. All of our educators are great, but I'm saying those people are passionate. But they, at some point, you have to just stop and check out. And if they're working in classrooms where, you know, we don't have a math teacher in a school that we're teaching math, that might be stressful to whoever's teaching that math class who maybe isn't. And again. So I look at this as not only like a real support for our students, but also for our staff right now. So yeah, I would rather see all this done in-house. I would. But that's not the reality of what's happening. And I would like to see it function better than it has apparently in the past, right? I understand the increase. I'm okay with the increase in money because I'm believing what you're saying, because we could obviously find that out if you lied to us, right? And guess who's gonna find it out if you lie to us? He's gonna find it out before I even
ready.
check, so
I
there's
love
no
it.
point.
I love it. I'll give
So
you
I
everything.
believe you, I believe what you're saying, I believe you're coming to us with the truth. This is my thing. If we sit here and don't just push this forward, then we're tying his hands behind his back, because this has to get going. So I understand we don't want to rush when we choose things. And I understand the program was not run as efficiently as it should have. That's what I'm gathering from all the information I've got here today, right? And nobody has seemed to disagree with that. And everybody seems to know that we need to do better. But I would hate to hold off a program that wasn't running 100% perfect when it still helped a significant amount of kids. Could help more if it was run more efficiently, right? We could say. So I would hate to hold this back because we want it to run. Instead, I would say, you know what? Let's push this forward. Let's go quick. Let's get it done while everybody's passionate about it, while everybody's up and running. And we're going to come back and check and make sure things are going the way they should be going. And we're going to be paying attention to that. And there's going to be some serious accountability. But I think everybody wants that, right? So I just would hate to see this hold up, because these kids need this. They've been without it for too long. This probably should have been done last year. Weren't we in school last year? So I don't know. I don't know. I was on the committee last year. I wasn't sitting on this subcommittee. So I'm not really sure if the RPA didn't want it back or what the deal
Yeah,
was.
I think it's really fair to say we had some real challenges in
Yeah, you had challenges
in school
there.
leadership last year.
Okay,
And those challenges also did not support the ability for this program to potentially be where it needed to be.
Fair
and that
enough.
was the last couple of years of just all things between COVID and just school
Yeah.
leadership. So for the sake of, pointing any fingers to any individual specifically,
Sure.
I think the school leadership piece could have done more.
Right.
We now have people at the district level that can help support this work, where that was also not in place over
Right.
last year at all either. So I am fully committed to RPA, and I have been very committed to the work down there. I will be working with Kyle very directly to ensure that this work
Yeah.
goes off, and working with the support staff to ensure that kids are getting recruited and making sure
Yeah.
that we are following through on our ends. And I look forward to a January report out, as well as projected enrollment for culinary and what that can look like come January.
Yeah, my line of questioning has nothing to do with holding anything up. I don't want to hold anything up. These kids.
I didn't say a line of questions holding it up. I was just saying.
Question.
we're
I
not
have,
looking
I have
to
a
hold
question though, so we
I was
can move
saying
this
I don't want it
forward.
to be held up.
So the issue that I have now is just, we got 151, where's the money coming from? Where, it wasn't in the budget at this rate. So where is it coming from, and how much money do we have left?
And that's where you come in.
Wait, not you, Kevin.
We have the money.
Yeah.
I'm gonna report out on Monday night.
So we had a placeholder for all of these,
Yes.
and this isn't included in it.
But
So you're gonna have to come up with something else to tell us.
And I will.
And I want you to know we've included Kevin along the way to be able to speak to that, so he understood where we were looking for, and that's why, we wanted to make sure he was here with us too, because
Yeah.
I know we need him to make this, support this move. So he was looped in with our conversations, particularly once Meg and I and Kyle got to a place of understanding where we were with the financial number.
Yep, no, I get it, and I wanna move it forward, but I do think we need a check-in.
Yeah.
We need to be able to have the ability to say, hey, time out, this isn't working. But along the way with this conversation, you talk about the alternative school, they need after school, after hours. You need wraparound services and all that stuff. At the budget time, I personally said to the principal of the school, superintendent, the assistant superintendents, the finance people, that when you're creating all these new positions, they need to be staggered hours before we start to do this. I said that in a public meeting. And you know what it fell on? It was crickets. Because we got the same that thing that wasn't working. An alternative school needs to have alternative options, how you pay people, when you pay them, and the like. We got nothing through the budget related to that. So when I come at it like, well, where's this? I've asked for this stuff for years. We were going positive 3-4 years ago with these programs, with a different direction. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants that we received and to be moving forward. And you know what, we went backwards. I said it, she said it at the subcommittee that we've had over and over. We're going backwards, and we were allowing it. That's why I'm a little less wanting to just jump here, because we've asked this. So I trust the people that are in play now. I just think that we need to all get on the same page. But with that being said, I'd also like on Monday for a presentation of how much money is in the budget for RPA for school staff to be tutoring, counseling, anything else after school, including home visit hours, for administrators, for counselors, for whoever. I want all of that information for what's specifically to the alternative school. And if it's nothing, just be honest, because we have some money to put in, but we need to be able to say, this is what was going on. When I worked down there, we did after hours, we used to go knock on doors. It was very successful. So if we're gonna give money to everybody else, agencies and the like, because we need to do this, we need to give the money there. And I don't wanna hear somebody say, oh, those people get paid enough already. They gotta work 18 hours a day. No, if he needs some money to put some people out to go and do what we need to do, we need to give him the money. And my gut tells me there's not a chunk of money in that budget, so I'd like on Monday to have at least something to say, 50 grand, 75 grand. Let the principal make the decisions on who we can give the extra hours to. With that, I'm looking for a motion to move forward.
Motion to refer?
Motion made,
Second.
seconded, all in favor? Aye, opposed, so voted. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, nice to meet you.
everyone.
Thank you, Meg.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend.
You too.
So,
So youth
the
court.
youth court is the other one that's like
Yes.
time sensitive.
So, did you happen to get the supplement? I apologize if those did not get linked in last night. They were on my kitchen table and they were not readily available.
I can't read them if they're on the kitchen table.
I know, and I was literally thinking about it this morning when I was working out. Like, oh my God, I didn't link those in. And
If
then
you had
Deb-
invited you over for dinner, you would have.
Deb stopped me.
Working out.
So I just want to speak a little bit about youth court. I shared with you 2009 through 2023 youth court program totals.
I had a hard copy and now I can't find my hard copy. Or maybe I didn't have a hard copy?
What are you looking for?
That.
This?
It has youth court.
No,
That
that.
or this
Yeah.
one?
I didn't have that.
I sent it. I emailed it. This
Okay.
afternoon.
You
Okay.
printed it, it was confusing.
Oh, you printed it, sorry.
I don't have a
Yours.
fancy printer.
Okay. Sorry.
I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
board
Yeah,
Yeah,
No
yeah.
problem, just go through and let us know
Yeah.
the summary.
So the summary is this. Youth court, I'm speaking now as a former principal. I'm speaking as someone who's worked with youth court, both as a guidance counselor and as a former principal. That when the contract for youth court historically has come forward, it has been a $45,000 contract here in the city for the last 4 years. It's been a $45,000 contract. When we look at students served, the thing about youth court, as I've come to learn now at the district level, they're funded through a number of different funding sources, but they support all students as it relates to Bristol County, right? Fall River, because we refer a number of students as an alternative to suspension, which is now part of the state law. We have been given a $45,000 contract with youth court because of the number of students that we serve through the program. When I asked about Bristol County, towns like Westport, Somerset, Dartmouth, they do not pay an additional amount to youth court because they do not use the services in the amount with which Fall River does, right, across our public school system. So when you do notice the data, you'll notice there's going to be a column, total youth served Fall River. That is the number of students across all of the schools in Fall River, Charter, Argosy, and or any students that get referred through the court system, because the court system can also refer to youth court. If you look at the second column, the total Fall River Public Schools students served, those numbers, last year specifically, we served 58 students. The year prior, they served 83 students. And keep in mind, those are the successful completions of the program. That is not the referrals that the Fall River Public Schools make, and then some students are not successful upon completion, right? So when we look at the programs, youth court has grown in their program offerings. Originally, they were in 8th grade, like a middle school and high school program, and really, when you start getting to high school, you're really only looking at your freshmen, maybe sophomores, because then kids land old enough that they can be charged by the courts, right? Always an option for all kids, depending upon what the incident is, but in many cases, as kids get older, youth court is less effective based on the nature of the program model, right? That being said, they've also added a Brighter Futures program that really supports predominantly our 4th and 5th graders as another mode to the vehicle, right? Because youth court is a program, when you complete it once, you're not allowed to repeat the program. So as we needed something for our upper elementary school, youth court rose to the challenge. They created Brighter Futures. In addition to that, as we move forward, youth court has just developed a vaping cessation program. This will work in conjunction with what we are currently developing within the Department of SEL, where we're looking to create essentially diversion programs in-house, so that for kids that get caught with first-time offenses in certain categories, we'll put them through an educational cycle of professional development and knowledge building, and really building kids' understanding of how they're hurting themselves based on, for this case, we'll use vaping as an example, right? But Youth Court now has a Tier 2 intervention program that will give our schools another leg of an opportunity to avert suspension by using this program. So I'm very, very confident that our numbers are going to continue to rise because of the fact that they've got this vaping program in addition to that going into this year. In addition to that, when I met with Youth Court, one of the pieces that was written into the program in black and white, which was a little shocking to me, was that RPA students were not eligible for Youth Court. I understood their rationale for where there was some hesitation around program successfulness. However, I told Terry when I was meeting with her that I could not support and ask for a further contract if we were not going to be open for conversation for students from every school within the Fall River Public Schools to have access. I said, furthermore, I really think we need to be looking at our middle schools, making sure that every student goes through Youth Court before they're even referred to RPA as another step factor along the way. But again, I'm learning about some of these pieces of how things have been navigated over the years, and so we're going to put some of these things in place. That being said, originally, back in, I don't know if it was July or August, to be completely honest with you, but when the original contract came forward, we had budgeted for the $45,000 as we always had historically. We just paid the $45,000 contract when we received it in. If you notice on the back of this kind of hard to read contract, you can note in the fine print that it was they were requesting the $108,000 of an increase. So I'm bringing this before the committee because the request of 45 was asked for an additional amount of funding. I know firsthand how effective these programs are for our schools and for us to be able to really meet the demands of the law, also create viable options that I have also seen firsthand truly be effective for our kids, right? So I am asking the committee to refer this to the larger committee to increase the funding to the offset to the 108 to be able to meet the demands of the contract. I told Terry, every year annually we would have to come back to the table, take a look at the numbers, make sure that we're serving the number of students to the same token of RPA. I don't want to we're not just going to cut a check every year. We want to make sure the programs meet our needs. And so that was why we were coming back for a second. We've already paid them the 45, so I want to be clear with the committee on that. We signed that contract in August. That was approved back in August.
And we received that right after.
And we received this right after that meeting, or at least it landed in my desk right after that meeting, which is where the difference came up from. So we would like to be able to support the request for that contract, knowing that we're in a place that we can support the request for that contract. But talking about where our funding's going as a district, I made it very clear to Terry that we need to be able to look forward and make sure that these additional programs are going to meet our needs and that we are serving the number of students that we anticipate being able to serve between the vaping piece that we know has been a big issue at our secondary schools, as well as leveraging the Brighter Futures program that is also not widely accessed across all elementary schools. So that will be a layer of education for elementary principals to make sure all principals are aware of this service. Youth Court for the middle schools has been widely used. Some schools use it more than others, but we are looking to push that out, again, speaking about some policies and procedures as it relates to making sure that kids are given this as an intervention.
Any questions?
So the 45 was just
Ms.
that.
Ferrera.
Sorry. So the 45 was just. I thought you saw me when I looked at you. The 45 was just for the youth court. So they're saying that this increase is because they're bringing in the Brighter Futures and the vaping.
No, they're speaking to the increase because they have not increased funding over the last few years, right?
So they decide to triple it.
So with minimum wage going up,
Absolutely.
right? With minimum wage going up, the state funding that they've received has also not changed. So their state funding line items has been consistent as well. And the services that they continue to provide as it relates to community service on Saturdays, the youth court jury and being part of the jury duty, the folks that they need to pay, the kids that they pay, because if we know how the jury duty works, it's our Fall River students that run the courts and whatnot. And so as a result of increasing cost of students, so if you'll also notice the cost per student, the program is about a 4-month commitment, just so you understand too. Youth Court is not like a drive-through experience. It takes about 4 months for the kids to complete the program. So after all the hours of case management, after all the hours of supporting community service and navigating the elements of all of the different interventions that become part of every kid's case file, it was originally, if you look back historically, it started at around $1,200 per student as a case consult. It then rose to $1,500 per case consult, and now with the increase of inflation and minimum wage and other pieces, it's up to about $1,800. So as a result of that and the increase in programming that they're looking to bring forward, it felt responsible. It felt as though it was in line with where other programs had been. And so I wanted to be able to bring this forward. And if the committee does not feel that 108 doesn't want to move to the 108 number, I am just asking that we consider an increase from the 45 based on those other elements.
Ms. Rodriguez.
So where are we at with the RPA conversation? Because as we know, I'm not very good at hiding my face. So when you said
all of our Florida public schools will have opportunity to be part of access. They will.
Okay, because it sounded like were they open to a conversation, and then that's sort of where it landed.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, they will.
They will.
Because I was not coming before you without it being 100% of our schools.
That was a condition.
That was a condition for me to move forward.
I thought the conversation was a condition.
Oh, no,
the
no,
way
no.
that was initially. Okay. Because that.
And we will case consult on every student from Stone and RPA to make sure that it's not you're doing this or because as we know, youth court takes a participatory agreement on both parties, right? And so they want to be sure, because they have not had success previously with students from those schools, that we are having conversation about supporting the students to be successful and that families are involved with getting involved. That being said, I also feel we need to be working with our middle school principals to ensure prior to an RPA referral that youth court is part of that student's intervention program before getting there, whenever the opportunity presents itself.
Right, if it's warranted.
Correct.
There are some kids, I think for a long time we've just used RPA as behavior issues.
Correct.
We had send them over, but that's not what RPA was supposed to be. So, I feel a little bit more comfortable with that. My other question, and it's not about youth court, but it is about youth court, but not in terms of whether or not we should approve a contract with them. It's more of what are the preventative pieces that we're doing before a kid gets to the point where we're going to look at referring a kid to youth court. So it is a voluntary piece for families. Families have to agree to participate in that program, but I want to know, what are we doing before we sit down with the family and say, we suggest sending this kid over to youth court? Because I've been part of those conversations before with families where that's the first time there's ever been a conversation about a kid's presentation in the building, or it's been one particular incident, and these are some of the littlest guys. So I want to make sure that we're doing a really good preventative job and that this doesn't come out of nowhere for a family.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, that's never been my experience personally as a building leader. I don't know specifically how every building functions at that level, but I can tell you, based on my own experience with using youth court as an alternative, it becomes the fourth or fifth or sixth intervention with a family and with a student, depending upon what that incident is with a student, right? I think that's another caveat too, right? Like there's going to be one-offs with kids that occur.
There's going to be a big one.
And for some kids, a quick opportunity in youth court is going to be just what they need to keep them straight and keep them moving, right? And for our more repeat offenders, ensuring that we have intermittent interventions in place, consistent interventions in place, I should say, and in many cases, as we know, those conversations with families are ongoing, weekly, bi-weekly, and on a regular basis.
Last school year, I sat with 3 families whose kids had been referred at the elementary level, 4th and 5th graders, that were referred to Brighter Futures without any previous discussion about that kid's presentation. And so, as a outside provider, as a clinician, that's concerning. So I just want to make sure that we're following through on those pieces, that we're doing the preventative work. I think youth court is a great option because it connects our kids to other resources in the community. They get some of the supports and services they need, and it's absolutely 100% better than sending our kids through, the traditional legal system. Because not every kid needs that.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think some of the answer, I think on the charter or whatever, if I recall from the youth court, was about had to be a first-time offense, had to be. So I think some of those things fly in the face of what we're asking them to do. So I'm okay if they're gonna amend their rules and charter or whatever, but my history with them was first time offense only, like, so sometimes if a kid's been at RPA, they've had 4 or 5 different things already happen, and then they got referred. So then when they go and say, how many times you been in trouble, kid? And then the kid says, oh, 14. The youth court wouldn't take them for that reason. So if they want to tweak it, I think it's a good program to start with.
Because after all, it is a diversionary program, so you're right.
Yeah, they don't want to divert it. It's like a first-time diversion rather than you've done some other stuff. So all those things are well and good. One of my concerns is that when we were going through the budget process for these allotments of money, I asked at the time, this is over a year ago, before we just give money, we need to know what it is, why it is, and I appreciate that we're here now, but it's October. We did the budget in August. So we need to do that, what we're doing now, before we agreed to that 45,000. I was under the belief that after asking the administration to do that, that was checked out, and that what we were voting on was what they really wanted and what we could back up as administrators to say that's what it is. So I'm a little upset by looking at that and say, even if it came in after. So if we did it in August and we said 45,000, and that came to somebody afterwards saying we needed 120, well, what happened August after we got that? We haven't heard anything now for it. So just a food for
Yeah,
thought.
I think it's just a matter of again, stepping into this role of understanding what contracts do we even have out there, what are their fiscal years, and if their fiscal years don't match up to our fiscal year, then that's where we need to start into those conversations, right? So as part of my work moving forward, getting a handle on these contracts, is there an anticipated increase? What is that going to look like in preparation for our budget has to be part of the process. Because all of this really, and there is one other that will come next, not now, but the Katie Brown contract that has not yet been finalized, as I'm coming to understand, these things need to be taken care of in July, right? Because that way we're ready to go come August school committee, and we're starting in September so that all of our contracts are ready to go and the services can be rendered to our kids and families, and schools can plan forward for them, right? It's all of these pieces together.
I
So
totally
we will
get it.
make,
I'm
we
not
will
blaming
make.
you.
I just want you to understand,
It
again, being
has been
responsible
brought-
for it. I just wanted to speak to where I've been at with
It
it.
has been brought up for years, and now I think getting to the point of what we need to do. Some of them get 45 grand, some of them get 90 grand, some of them get this amount. The CAC used to get 0. So
Yeah,
there's
so
really
another contract.
there's
Right.
like a rhyme or reason on what we do and why. So then we, just being part-time, don't get into all this. We need you guys to do it. Then you say, this is why it makes sense, this is not. And it doesn't matter who's on the board or who's on this and whatever pet projects, to make people happy. It's about what's the services for the kids.
And if the services
So-
are no longer yielding the results and outcomes that we're looking for, then maybe we need to part ways with some and reestablish with new ones.
Correct.
And so that is also where I'm at in looking at, wait a minute, just because we've done this for 20 years, does that make sense? And maybe not 20 might be an exaggeration, but
Might not.
we just need to make sure, that the program, especially as we move forward in looking at the way in which we're interpreting the alternative to suspension piece of the law,
Yeah.
to Sarah's point, making sure that there are interventions that lead up to these larger interventions. But I think it's also a matter of, we've added so many new support staff over the last couple of budget seasons. It's also, and principals come and going in the last couple of years. So there's an element to this also that needs to be educating the folks that are implementing these programs, running these programs, and referring to these
Yeah, I'm
programs.
sure it's gonna work out. I would also ask on Monday that we find out where money's coming from, the same. And with that, entertain a motion.
Motion to
approve.
refer?
Motion to refer, seconded, all in
And I
favor?
I appreciate that. Thank you for the additional.
All in favor. The,
Do you want to table those?
we're gonna, I wanna see if we can, we're gonna have to table a few of these because some of these are longer conversations, but I recently asked the superintendent to clarify, one of the things I put on wasn't necessarily clear. So we had the, Ms. Obenchain's curriculums for the sub-separates or whatever. So I'd like to skip around and just ask, because she's here, I wanna get a quick update on that because it's probably quicker than some of the other discussions.
So the,
Before you go there, can I make a?
Sure.
The attendance policy piece, specifically the language piece around the D4, is there a possibility we can just attend to, even if it's the first?
We're gonna jump right to that, so we're gonna
Okay.
do her, and then the attendance one, and we'll have to table the other two.
Okay.
Ms.
so,
Obenchain.
yep, so it's my understanding that this committee, approved the curriculum called Attainment for Community-Based. which is a K-12 curriculum, focuses on more functional academics and some life skills. That is being implemented in all of our community-based programs. They all have all the materials for it, so it's Spencer Borden, Cuss, and Durfee. We provided PD during the year last year for all of the teachers to get up to speed and get the curriculum rolling out. The additional, that worked fine. The feedback from the teachers was fine. We didn't have a great way to collect the data on the kids because it wasn't like an online component, so different people did it differently, teachers left, all of that stuff. That's one of the goals for this year, is to collect the data on like benchmarking the beginning of the year, then collecting it over the year. But since last year, we now have new teachers, so we are currently working with the attainment company to bring more professional development so the new teachers can get up to speed. However, I was able to assign some of our cluster coordinators who are special education teachers, most of them have worked in substantially separate programs before, to work with the community-based teachers around using the curriculum that we have on lesson planning and implementation, because they haven't gone through the formal training with the vendor yet. So that's in the works. Let's see. Yeah. Any questions specifically on attainment?
Any questions?
You said that there was no online tracking system?
Not that there wasn't one, but it wasn't used with fidelity enough that we could rely on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was part of the
So,
conversation that we had.
Yeah, they have
That
the ability to do it, but it wasn't, and there wasn't the oversight in all of those pieces last
Okay.
year.
Any questions on the attainment portion? No, go ahead.
The other one was, I believe, was Steyer Fitzgerald, which was really for our intensive autism population, and that was basically at Henry Lord K through 8. So I'm not really sure how, but because I was not here, but probably the end of the school year, around June, I was contacted by Unique Learning Systems, which is a curriculum provider that we've already had in the district. We had 45 licenses at the end of last year, some of which weren't even used, and it was like $48,000 or something like that. When I asked the vendor, like, wait a minute, we already have this in the district, I wasn't sure where it was used, who had it. They actually sent me a list of teachers who were assigned to the licenses. It was primarily up at Durfee that they had the licenses for. This also has the news to you component, so it looked like some of the teachers were accessing the news to you feature, but not actually the curriculum. As I went through the demo of what the curriculum looked like, deciding if we were going to renew that contract or the subscription, not the contract, renew the subscription, I thought about Henry Lord, and I wanted to get some more input on Steyer Fitzgerald. So I pulled in the cluster coordinator who was part of making the decision of Steyer Fitzgerald, and then asked her to watch the demo with me, look at the difference with Steyer Fitzgerald. I learned at that time Steyer Fitzgerald's primarily instructional modality is discrete trial training, which is not effective to do with a student 6 hours a day, all day, every day. So we had this unique learning system. We had Steyer Fitzgerald. I brought the supervisor from last year, the cluster coordinator, and showed them. They had no idea that we even had this opportunity or had this curriculum in the district to begin with. So I had them go back, talk to the teachers about it again. And I'm just being transparent on kind of what unfolded, right?
My frustration is not.
When I look at unique learning systems, it is, it provides not only support for teachers for lesson plan, it has embedded scaffolding in it, and it's aligned to the state standards, so students with our most significant needs are getting access to state standards. It was a no-brainer for me on the sense of like, this is what we need. Not that discrete trial training doesn't have a place in some capacity for some students. It's just not a primary instruction modality that has been beneficial for our students, nor do we have the staffing. It's basically one-to-one instructional modality, and we don't have enough staffing in all of these programs. So What we are doing now is so when I worked with Unique Learning Systems over the summer, we had a 3-hour PD through a webinar that was already from last year's subscription. So we used that over the summer to start showing our staff and getting the teachers on board. They absolutely loved it and felt much more confident in being able to work with the students because again, it did that scaffolding, even if you're in 8th grade reading at a 3rd grade level, the content that you're getting is developmentally appropriate for an 8th grader, right? You're not gonna get a nursery rhyme piece. So I went through with Durfee and a couple of the middle schools, some of the teachers had access. I went through and really looked at the hours the teacher actually logged on to Unique Learning, and I shuffled the licenses around. So when we renewed the subscription, it was actually less licenses. We didn't need to, so we actually had a decrease in funding. It went from like 40, I think it ended up to be like 34 or something that we already, we renewed the subscription and we kept it going. Having said that, they're already on board, so not only, and the committee already approved the subscription, so it provides the ongoing professional development and the licenses for Henry Lord, and it's going phenomenal over there. They're coming in on November 7th to do the full PD. So we still have the discrete trial training. They are using it as more of the intervention supplemental if they feel like that would be beneficial based on BCBA input, cluster coordinator input for the students, but over this year we will track how often they are using that versus Unique Learning Systems and make some decisions when that piece comes for review.
Any questions? Ms. Rogers?
Less question, more comment. This was the conversation that we had last June, and you weren't here. So I do not for 1 second want you to hear this as I'm frustrated with you, because that is not the case at all. What's frustrating is that we had this conversation and asked multiple times, is this a purely DDT type of program? And the answer was no, we're not going to be providing this. There's way more to it than that. And in reality, there wasn't. And so, for anyone who's not familiar with what that looks like, it's one-to-one drill-based teaching. And I don't know a student that can sit there for 6 hours a day in their school day, one-to-one with a staff person being drilled on curriculum aspects. That's not genuine learning. And that was the conversation that we had. So Unique Learning Systems sounds like it's much more appropriate developmentally. And then, if we supplement with discrete trials, then so be it. But this was the concern. So when these questions came up, there was a lot of pushback. We had 2 separate meetings about it. There was a ton of pushback on, nope, this is the best one. I don't know why you're asking these questions, but this is why. Because it's not appropriate for our kids. And so we've got to make sure that we're doing things that are developmentally appropriate. And it sounds like you found the thing that we were using, but then that's also concerning because we had this and it seems like no one really knew.
So
Well, we knew at the high school.
they knew that it was
Yeah,
the high
they've
school
used it
level,
at the high
but
school.
Right, but
I remember that.
The people at Henry Lord didn't have the opportunity to
Right.
even look at it, and they
Didn't
didn't know
know
that it was an option.
that we had it,
But I
right.
don't know how those things were picked or anything like that.
Ms. Guerra, any questions on that?
No.
I share Sarah's concern because I was at the meeting. I was criticized from administration, from staff, from whoever, trying to say we're not meeting quick enough, we didn't do all this nonsense. And then to hear what I'm hearing today, it really gets me angry because how many more times are we gonna do the same thing over and over? And nobody's held accountable to presenting false information, poor information, not sharing information, and it has nothing to do with you either. But go back, I'm gonna
I wanna
ask that
stress
by
that.
Monday, I want a report that says, go back and do the research. I wanna know who was there. I wanna be able to tell all of the committee members what happened, so that everybody can see, this is how something like this happens. We should not be paying for any kind of curriculum that everybody doesn't know. That we shouldn't have it. And we shouldn't have these kind of conversations that have to say, we had it in one place, we didn't know, we had licenses that we didn't use. I'm totally burnt out with these same conversations happening. So I was frustrated because we went and said we were gonna, I think we even met on multiple times to say, no, we're not trying to put a stop to this. We're trying to make sure it's the right thing to do and got criticized for it. And then it's like, okay, so now it comes out that what we were worrying about was right. But at some point, somebody's got to be held accountable for not sharing the information. We got levels of administration prior to you coming. we had a director, we had assistant director, we got high school, we got middle school, we got this, we got that. They're all supposed to be talking to each other in the department. To hear this now is like we have a whole broken system of people that just don't talk to each other, and we just keep on spending money foolishly. So I'm totally for it. If you need more money for it, I'll go for it. But I think the frustration is well warranted.
What do you need, Lord?
I just think it's well warranted that this is just not
I
right.
just wanted you to know that, like, I will continue to bring these things forward, be transparent. I'm happy to share any of that piece
And we appreciate
again.
it.
And
Totally.
that's how we're gonna do that.
I think it's a
right?
great,
Thank you.
it's a good reason to have the quick meeting like this, or that section. We can put that behind us and move on, but I really want to get some sort of background on what happened. Lastly, before we end, Dr. B, you have one piece of the attendance review, is that what this?
I mean, at least the first piece, the second piece, maybe we can table it for later for time's sake, or we
Yeah.
can include it now, it's completely up to you guys.
I would like to
Can we
do-
just leave it to the
What's
common
urgent?
language piece, because I have other questions about D4 that I don't think that,
We have
and
time for.
we don't have time for that, and I don't want to,
Because-
it's 6 o'clock on a Friday night, I'm not gonna do that to people, that's a really awful thing to do.
So the part that I wanted to move forward was the impact on the grade D, that was the section we wanted to move forward.
And what is it?
The only change that we were looking to, so this language has already been approved. The only change that we were looking to make was connecting the D4 policy to daily attendance and not class attendance. From a monitoring perspective, up at the high school particularly, mainly, it is a total beast to navigate and manage the class attendance piece as it relates to the attendance policy. It was piloted last year, Drew, you can speak to that maybe, where the daily absence was used as opposed to the class attendance as it relates to the D4 piece of the policy. The policy right now, as it was approved in August, speaks to class attendance. And at the executive meeting last week, it came up because we were approaching progress report time around last year and piloting daily attendance as opposed to class attendance for the attendance policy. We are working extremely hard right now across the district as it relates to daily attendance. Just for you to know, this week was an amazing week in the Florida Public Schools. We had upwards of 9 schools that were above 94 and 95% attendance for the week. And that is a count of 4 days because we run the weekly attendance from Friday through Thursday so we can report out weekly. Yesterday alone, the district had a 94% attendance rate. So we are working really, really hard, and we have attendance monitors and really boots on the ground around daily attendance. And so we feel right now we can do a really great job and be accurate and articulate and collaborate with kids around the daily and the doing the buyback and earning the buyback in a way that we didn't have as many hands in the pie. Right now at Durfee specifically, there's upwards of 30 attendance monitors. I've been working with Jess Stevens and the vice principals and the attendance monitors up there. I mean, at every school, but specifically up at the high school and the middle schools. So I just want to be able to request that we make the change to be that of daily and not class.
Can I just ask a question? I'm looking at the first paragraph that's Daly's bolded, but it says you're going to use the buyback provision. So when you're using daily instead of class, what if I just cut her class all the time? I don't get a D4 to 65 in her class, and I show up to all your classes?
You do. However, in speaking with Principal Damaris, he felt as though we are addressing the class cutting through disciplinary procedures and following up on the class cut discipline side of the house. Working with kids and looking at each individual kid who are chronic class cutters, to your point, intervening on that along the way, but not having it tied to the policy specifically as it relates to the D4.
So it's a management issue, not a reality. It's more of trying to manage it versus...
Trying to manage it with fidelity and trying to manage it in a way that we have equity in the way it's being managed, right? To your point, there are some classes that meet 3 days a week. There's some classes that meet 2, right? And so if I happen to miss on the Tuesday, every single Tuesday, right? At this point now, we have so many hands on attendance. Those things are going to get picked up in a way that I wouldn't have been as confident about in years past. But that was my exact question to Principal Damaris is, well, not every class runs Monday through Friday. We don't have a static schedule. So how do we work for those classes if kids are circumventing particular classes they don't want to go to, and how does that work out? And his response to me was, as great as office teams, we are on top of the class cutting piece, and that conversation gets intercepted at multiple points beyond the buyback point.
Ms. Burrow.
But, okay, so 4 unexcused daily absences. So that means if I have an unexcused absence, and it doesn't say consecutive, does it? In a term.
No.
So if I have 4 unexcused absences in a term not related to the class, then my grade gets, so in every class?
In every class.
So let's say I'm showing up at biology every time, and the only class, to Mr. Aguiar's point, that I'm missing is whatever. I'm gonna get a D in biology, and then I'm gonna buy back biology points when I was there. How does that work? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I kind of got it when we were talking about absences of a class, right? Because, okay, there's a buyback program. You owe that teacher, right? You were supposed to show up and you didn't show up. If this was a job and your teacher was your employer, you missed several days of work. But that shouldn't mean like my other job that I am showing. I don't know. Can you just kind of like rationalize it in my head for me?
So to try to clarify, so if you're absent for the day, you're absent in every single one of your classes. So the policy request would be like...
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not familiar then. I thought if you were late and still showed up, you could still be considered, like if you missed a certain amount of the day, you could still be considered absent. Is that true or no?
Depends on the amount of time, how late you come in.
So it's possible
That's true, yeah.
that I do attend
Half of
Dr.
your
Brownhardt's
class.
science class every time, but yet have several unexcused absences, right? Okay,
Correct.
sorry, go
Right.
ahead.
Yes, you're correct. So if it's more, I think it's more, if you're absent more than half the day, you can still be marked absent. And really the request for the change is it's a management issue, but it's also to align with the priorities. There's such a focus on, with the attendance liaisons right now, in the daily absent and kind of helping students get on a path where they're not chronically absent from school, that this is a tool that can be used in conversations when the liaisons are meeting with the attendance officers and the students and families. So we see it really as an alignment of that work and a tool in the toolkit to help students develop good habits. So the buybacks are they have to be in school on time 5 days in a row with good behavior to earn that buyback. To make that absence excused, and it's really to get to help them kind of develop those healthy habits that will sustain success.
So really speaking, kids could technically be absent upwards of 6 days. 6. You can buy back up to 2 absences. So 4 plus the 2, 6 days. Kids could be absent up to 6 days, buy back the 2, and get the grade they earned in their class.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does.
This is
So the only way that you don't earn the grade that you got in your class is if you don't come to school, meet the buyback criteria, and you have gone above the number of absences allowed within the policy.
I got 100 questions on this, like Ms. Roderick, I'm sure does, so
We
what I
have
would ask
probably
is
time,
this on the
yeah.
agenda on Monday? Is it currently on our agenda
believe
for
it is.
I
Monday?
don't think so, no.
So,
Can we just?
I would say
schedule
we'll
another subcommittee?
schedule, because we have a couple other ones, before, between
subcommittee.
this meeting, before the next regular meeting,
Right.
because then this
Not Monday.
change would have to go there anyway. And then in the meantime, we can shoot you emails, Madam Superintendent, about the question, because I've sat with many years of this, the D4, this, that, and the other thing, and I got some strong feelings about what it is. One thing I can ask for as part of just giving us data is where we say class attendance and cutting is a disciplinary response. I would like a report from the start of the school year of all of that exact thing. What was the attendance, cutting class, the disciplinary response, and the result, so that we can get to feel like, what is this? Is it, we're talking 100 kids, we're talking 5 kids, did anybody ever do it with it? So that's kind of the background I'm looking for.
I'd be interested in knowing too if any kids have actually not graduated or failed because of this.
I just want, we can get all that. I just want you to know, right now the policy is currently already approved because we approved
Yeah,
it in
yeah,
August.
we know
So
that, yeah, you're
we'll-
looking for a change.
Correct, the change from
The
class
change
to
from
daily,
award.
that was it,
I'm
right.
cool with that change,
Right.
that
Yeah,
change, because
and-
the policy is in place. We're
Well,
not-
that's my point,
We're
right?
just changing it to
so
make
we
it
can
easier
certainly
for
pull all
you
those
to stop
pieces.
doing it now. Okay, I get what
My
you're
question
saying.
is, because now first term is gonna come and go before we come back to the November school committee meeting.
So can we put it on October's?
So the question
We
is,
can't do that, it's too late, right?
It's
It's
too
Monday, October's meeting.
the
so
question
too
though is, based on everything you said, we have a policy that the Durfee administration recommended to us. Didn't come out of
Well, not
us.
the Durfee administration. We recommended as a committee, as the attendance committee, we
Whatever.
recommended
It
yeah.
came before this committee, the school committee to support.
We came for the policy subcommittee. That
Right,
was
but
where
then
we
we
brought it.
approved it, is my
Right.
point. So people had their bite at the apple to say what they wanted, or to go against it. Now, I wanna know, is it being implemented as we have? Or is it just, we don't agree with it, so we're not implementing it? So if the first term's over, and that was the policy, then the high school should have the data on what they've been doing for every one of those kids. Not assuming that we were gonna change it. When I asked for the data, it should show a whole slew of kids that were missing X amount of classes have D4s and their like, so that's just how I think about it, but I do appreciate everybody on a Friday night coming. I know nobody has
So,
anything.
I just
better
have
to
one
do.
more question about
Quick
this,
one.
this change here, that before we leave this.
Sure.
Quick question. So there's no way to get this word changed before like November? This is my only thing. I get that it should have been done, whatever, but the reality is, Dr. Barnhart's coming to us saying, hey, and as well as not just her, saying, hey, we can't gather this data. This is cumbersome. It'd be much easier if we could gather this data this way, and if we can gather the data better, it's going to be better for the students. So I understand maybe we
The
don't,
answer is,
maybe
it's
we don't
against
love
the
the
law.
policy. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
So how do we
can't-
change it?
can't- We cannot have an agenda item posted at this time because of the notice.
Okay.
So that's the reason why.
So
If we
it'll be
had-
November.
If we had an agenda item here, preemptively,
Mm-hmm.
that would have said on Wednesday, we wanna have a potential for an
Okay.
attendance week, but we didn't do that, so now it's too late for us to do.
Okay,
So,
but it can go in November then, I guess.
Yes.
we're gonna have a all
Oh, we'll
subcommittee
have
meeting
another one
between
before that.
now and then November, we'll hash it out, so
Okay.
that in November, we don't talk about it for 2 hours, we'll
All
have
right.
it drilled down.
Sounds good.
Any
I
other,
wasn't sure.
any other new business, anything?
Can
I get a motion to adjourn?
Table things? Is there anything else that has to be tabled?
I would say we don't even need to.
Do
We'll
we have
just-
to table
We
the
don't
other
need to
two
table
things?
them, we'll just,
Okay.
we're gonna put them on the next agenda.
Okay.
Motion
motion to adjourn?
made, seconded, all in favor? Aye, opposed, so
Aye.
voted. Thank you all.